All right, folks. It's a little bit cold if I'm just being transparent. It is the 28th of December, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. We are a clothing company that discusses the human body, called In The Image Clothing Company, because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. And we talk about how our bodies will just work. There's no reason the body wouldn't work unless there's a reason it couldn't, and that could be anything, but we need to address those things, and those reasons are just about always the same for everybody. We are just a human being. We just have this fleshly body that just only does what it does. We can't tell it what to do. We can't make it do anything that it doesn't do. And we don't need to do anything to get it to work either. We don't need to stretch. We don't need to work out. The key word is always allow the body to work, because it's designed to. So what we do is we talk mostly about clothing. That's why we're called a clothing company. We also will be selling clothing, yes, but we'll talk about that more toward the end. We are called a clothing company though because clothing is the only thing that's placed on us to the degree that it is. There's nothing else that our bodies come in contact with in our lives to the degree that they do with clothing. So imbalances left to right, forward and back within clothing, things placed within clothing like tags, and any kind of stiffness in seams or unevennesses in any way that's going to alter the body's natural workings is going to alter it in a way that nothing else in our lives does. So what we need to do is just allow the skeletal system to just connect in the way that it does. I didn't quite mention that yet within this video, but that's what we discuss is the skeletal system, because a lot of times what will happen is people, especially in modern 2024, will place so much emphasis on the musculature of the body without addressing the skeletal system. And all the musculature does is operate the skeletal system. It pivots it, it hinges it, it rotates it, and that's it. And our bodies just have their natural ranges of motion within everything, but they have to do that from their only working position. The body really is just about its natural foundational position of the skeletal system. So within that, we recognize where clothing needs to sit on everybody. Man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age. Pants need to be entirely above the hips, so they're off the hips completely, so the hips can open and move and have their natural ranges of motion. And then slightly higher in the front than in the rear, because our core is the center of our whole being, and it needs to stay activated always. The core would always be naturally activated without doing any kind of workout, because the body only works as a whole when it's actually working the way that it's designed to, and the core is the center of our whole being. But it just being muscles, they need to shorten to contract to be able to actually work. So that's why the waistline of the pants sits in that location. Otherwise, you couldn't ever have a naturally activated core, because you're going to be fighting your waistband. That goes for anybody, myself included. So the tops that we wear, the top seams need to be behind that little bone that's up here on the edges of your shoulders, which is actually the other end of the collarbone, and that just allows those shoulders to sit in their neutral position. And then ideally just right at the very edges is where those edge seams sit, because that's where the shoulder will move. So two prerequisites that I've had since before I founded In The Image Clothing Company, in addition to just having clothing sit where it does, these are things that we just do to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural. And then we get into depth with all these, slight little modifications that we can do to get things to stay centered and to just work for the body. But the first one is to lace the shoes that we wear with the technique that we use. And if you look up In The Image Clothing Company where you're seeing this, you can probably, navigate your way to find our shoelace technique. Included with our technique is just to tie the shoes evenly over toward the inside on both feet to have an even foundation. And then that combination, the technique of the lacing and then the tying evenly, will just allow your feet to be unaltered. Any other thing, any combination of shoe tying or lacing will alter the feet to some degree, and the one that we use just doesn't. So, second prerequisite, paired with the shoelaces, is to remove all tags from within clothing. If there's a tag inside the clothing you're wearing, it's causing a gap that's only in that location. It's made out of almost always nowadays a synthetic slippery material that shouldn't be against our bodies at all anyway, and it's just altering the body's positions, the way that it sits, as far as the muscles and bones connecting and sitting together, and just the operations, the activation of the muscles is being inhibited. And that includes within the shoes. Normally they're within the tongues of the shoes, the tags, and if they're hard to remove, I understand out of personal experience, but you can take that tag and just put slits into it with a knife or with some scissors, because if this is the top of my foot, this is my ankle, and this is my shin, and where that tag is placed on that ankle, it's really slippery, and the ankle needs to be able to dorsiflex and lift those toes up, and that you need some texture there, or else it's going to really alter the natural workings of your foot and ankle, and that travels through the rest of your body. So, all right, we are In The Image Clothing Company. I have so many videos about how clothing affects body mechanics, and normally we can change out that word clothing for like a certain item of clothing. I've got how pant cuffs affect body mechanics, how sleeve cuffs affect body mechanics, just so many things of items of clothing, and I haven't actually done a solid video under that kind of like titling on button-up shirts, but I'm wearing them so often. Since I founded In The Image Clothing Company, I've been wearing button-up shirts just about every single day, and I haven't made a solid video just about how button-up shirts affect body mechanics. So here we go, let's do this, because what you'll be able to see is if you go back, I say the dates at the beginning and usually at the end as well of every one of my videos, unless I miss one, and you can go back, from right now, a few months back, and we've only been In The Image Clothing Company for about 4 months, but you can see my button-up shirts that I wear. They all look very similar as far as the amount of buttons and the way that they stay centered, and so I'm going to get into that. We'll discuss it. I'll discuss how to allow them to work for your body, and then also all the things that are within button-up shirt designs, at least the ones I'm going to mention, the things that I'm going to mention, and how they're affecting the body. So yeah, got a few here. I've got a couple short sleeves, and then this one I'm wearing is a short sleeve, and then I've got this long sleeved. Ideally, everything that we wear is 100% natural. Our clothing will always be made out of 100% natural materials. Our bodies are natural. They don't like anything placed on them that's not. Just, it doesn't mesh. So, yes. Let's get into this. What we need, just as everything we need within clothing, is for the body to stay centered. We have a sternum, which is this bone in the front. On our back, we have our spine, directly behind this, and then our nose, and we have a center. We have a center line, a natural middle to the body, because gravity pulls us straight down, and if anything's imbalanced placed on us, it will imbalance the body, and through a lot of it, and that's what gets us into these patternings is imbalances within clothing. So you'll notice, like I was saying, my buttons will stay right in the center of my shirt when I'm wearing button-up shirts. And what happens a lot of time is people will wear button-ups and they'll undo the top 2 buttons, and then it stays pretty well centered, but up here, as far as once you get to your hips, if this bottom button, see there's a slot right here, but there's not a button there, I removed the bottom buttons. This one has it removed, this one has it removed, and this one has it removed, because if that button is closed around right where your hips are, then when you bend over, it's actually going to pull you toward the direction, like rotate your pelvis toward the direction of the side that's underneath. See how this side gets buttoned underneath? And that's usually how it is on what they would label as men's shirts, is the right side will be underneath, and usually what they label as women's shirts, the left side will be underneath. And that's not always the case, but that's usually how it is. So the side that is under, though, yeah, it rotates your hips, and so if you have it buttoned around your hips, then when you bend over, you'll twist like this, or when you go to sit down, you'll twist, and that's going to just alter your whole body from your pelvis out. So what I do is I normally what happens is there's 5 buttons. Once I'm like done modifying clothing, button-up shirts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I take the top button off because that is right around your throat, and one side's being buttoned over the other, so it's going to take your shoulders a little bit. Also, it's going to cause a different gap, like here versus here, and so when you breathe, it can really affect the way that you breathe, because when you breathe, it goes down through the center of your jaw, which your jaw's natural function, one of them, is to stabilize your entire body. And so we breathe and it goes through the center of the jaw, and it goes through our neck, so all the muscles into the jaw, into the neck, into the shoulders. If there's something that's like this tightly closed around our neck, just breathing alone, so that can be while you sleep, it can be while you're sitting, standing, anything, you're always breathing, and this can definitely put you into quite an imbalance by different expansion of, there's actually diaphragms within the neck as well as down here. So yeah, we want everything around the neck to be very centered as much as we can. So I take the top button off, as well as the bottom one. So those are the 2 buttons that I remove on the front, top one and the bottom one. It normally ends up with 5. If you've got a design that's a little bit different as far as the shirt, it could be different, but usually there's just 5 centered, you know, right, like my collarbones come in, they're right here. So right below the collarbones, the button starts, and right above where my pant waistline is where the buttons end. So just, it's like it's its own thing, right? You've got your pants, and then you got your shirt buttons, and then you've got your neck, like it's in its own spot, the buttons. So that's what I do. And then, as the prerequisite says that we always talk about, right? I always mention the prerequisites unless I forget them within every video, and removing the tags, right, is one of them. So within button-up shirts, sometimes you'll have up to 3. I've commonly had up to 3 tags within the rear of the shirts. But if you look inside this one, there's no tags. Inside this one, there's no tags. Inside this one, there's also no tags, and the one that I'm wearing, but there definitely was, and you can tell where they were stitched on. You can kind of see the outlines of, you know, where they were stitched. This one actually had one here on the collar. Let me flatten it out so you can tell. Had one here, it had one there, and then it had a little one sticking out of this seam here. And so a lot of times that'll be the case. You'll have up to 3, I mean, you can have up to as many as they put in there, but it's common for there to be that many tags within button-ups just in the rear. And that's right between your shoulder blades, your scapulas. And the reason we have our shoulder seam sit behind that bone, right, that's the other end of the collarbone, is to allow our shoulders to sit where they naturally do, behind our bodies. And I have a video for In The Image Clothing Company titled Shoulders Sit Behind the Body. And I go into the anatomy in depth and talk about, through the whole body, stemming from the feet, how to allow, it's not even so much how to allow within that, I mostly just discussed, yeah, that the shoulders naturally sit behind the body. So if we want our shoulders to sit behind us, and in order for that to happen, those bones, these scapulas, these big bones that are on both sides of your back, need to, like, I'll turn so you can see. Watch my scapulas come close together on my back. See that motion? Now the neutral shoulder that allows for a neutral wrist and travels just through neutral spine and jaw and the whole body is back here. Like right here is where I'm standing normally. And so the shoulder blades need to get back there and stand like this, right? I mean, it's just how I stand. But if you have things between your shoulder blades back there, they can't really retract into their neutral, normal sitting position. So that's a lot of why people are so far forward, is because tags in the rear of shirts. But that's something, that's one of our 2 prerequisites. We mention that within every video, like I said, unless we forget to say it. So, but I think the big thing versus a t-shirt is you can have up to 3 or more tags within a button-up, and so that's just greatening the effect of what's happening with the tags in the rear. So There's also almost always a tag in the left side over here inside the shirt. Well, I mean, they're all removed, but normally there's just a little bit of material left because I just cut them out. I don't actually like unpick the stitch and take them all the way out. So I was just going to show, there we go. So, right, I removed the tag. You can see the little bit of excess tag material there. That's on the inside of the left. It's usually right about here. And that is just going to do this to your left arm, which will, I'm not gonna get so into all the anatomy within this video. For some reason, I feel like I just am not. Normally I go pretty into depth with the anatomy of what's actually happening with these, you know, with something like that that's causing a gap in a location, but I don't feel like I'm gonna do that within this video. So I'll just discuss, yeah, you know, it's gonna cause a gap there, and that will just change the rest of your body. And I could discuss what it's doing to the rotations and to the positions of things that are nowhere near where that tag's placed. But anyway, remove that tag. And yeah, tags out, bottom button off, top button off. And what I do is remove pockets. Now this shirt had double pockets and they're not there anymore. This one, I'm not sure if this had pockets actually. I don't think it did, but this one definitely had double pockets and now it doesn't. And okay, just kidding, this one had one pocket. This video, man, it's like a very real video. I think I'm also just not used to having things in my hands. Normally when I'm filming these, I'm just kind of out here, just like my body alone. So this shirt has double pockets still. The reason I remove pockets is because, like I said, with our shoulders naturally sitting behind our body, if there's anything excess on the front of our body, it's going to pull those shoulders forward, and they naturally sit back here. So unless you're actually going to be using the pockets, which I can't tell you what to do, but really all that's going to do is further the imbalance. If the material alone of the pocket is already pulling your shoulders forward, if you place things into those pockets, it's doing that even worse. So yeah, I would say don't ever place anything into any pockets within clothing, but times and places, and I'm not telling people what to do, I'm just telling you the effects of what's happening if you do those things. So I would say we don't even need pockets in clothing as far as the human body is going to get altered if we have them in there. And that's personal experience. I used to keep a lot of things in my pockets a lot of the time, and yeah, really damaging. So I remove all front pockets of shirts because that way you can just fully get your ranges of motion and extension. And I always say, I will always say, and I am the founder of this company, In The Image Clothing Company, that we shouldn't have to stretch. We shouldn't have to, I'm only twisted because this is under my arm, but the body is just given ranges of motion, and so all you're doing when you're stretching is stretching into the ranges of motion that are already there, but they just feel like inhibited because there's something, like pockets in this case, inhibiting parts of the body's ranges of motion. So yeah, that's what we do, and it's not just our goal, but that's really what we do here at In The Image Clothing Company, is allow us to get to the point where we don't have to ever stretch. It's not just like an ideal, but we can get there. You know, we have our own situations, but we really can get there, and I do that, and so I show what I do to allow it to happen. So I'm gonna show this how I remove pockets. If you're just going to have nothing but a pair of scissors, this is a pocket on the front of the shirt. What I like to do is just come down to the bottom of it and see this stitch that's on the actual pocket. I'll cut just like a little, cut one of those little stitches and then move over, usually skip one of the little like rounds to the stitch and then cut another one. So cut two of them with like one in between, just so that I can kind of lift it up like this. See that? So now you've got this little bit of a gap here. You can do this with a seam ripper, but if people don't have a seam ripper, just about everybody has a pair of scissors. So then I just kind of come underneath there like that and just start to cut the stitches. You don't need to cut the fabric. Ideally, we don't cut the fabric, or else then you've put cuts into the fabric. But just cut those stitches and just kind of go along it and just pull up on the pocket. I'm not going to do the whole thing right now, just for the sake of the video. Is not just about removing the pocket, but yeah, see, so I've already gone that far, that quick. So just go all the way around the border of the pocket. One thing with these is up here at the top of the pocket, it's usually got quite a thick stitch here where they've like ended the stitching, and so that part can be a little bit more work to get off than the rest of it, because this goes very quick, as you can tell, but then you get up there and it just takes a little bit more time usually. So I would say to remove all pockets from button-ups because of what it's doing to your shoulders and then traveling through the rest of your body. With our clothing, I can't guarantee how it's going to look as of today, but you know, just we're so intentional. I mean, that's the only reason we're going to sell clothing, living within especially the country that I live in, the United States of America. Modern 2024 though, there's so much abundance of clothing, and a lot of it's just really pretty terrible. So the only reason we're going to make clothing is to be extremely intentional about letting the body just do its thing without being restricted. So anyway, I would say remove pockets from button-ups. Now that's about it with a button-up shirt. One thing, when you have a long sleeved one, it's ideal to keep sleeves off of the wrist. They don't have to be this high. This is not quite where I would normally be wearing shirts. This is just a shirt that I have that I wear under things when it's quite cold. But we don't want our sleeves to touch the hands, because that really alters the angle of the wrist, the natural looseness to the fingers, and that's altering the shoulders and then through the rest of the body. So ideally keep them off the hands. And if you have the buttons on the rear of the sleeve cuff of long sleeve button-ups, what you can do is just leave them unbuttoned. I mean, yeah, if you need to have them buttoned up for like dress code somewhere, like in, you know, wherever you are, but if you leave it unbuttoned, then your wrists are still very mobile. Even then, if it's like very slightly on your wrist, if it's unbuttoned, then you have a lot of mobility within your wrist. So yeah, just all that we can do to not restrict the body. Now, yeah, cool. One thing you can really check though is there's side seams almost always on button-up shirts, and I say I don't like side seams when it comes to like t-shirts because it really stiffens up the body. But the way that button-up side seams are stitched, they're really flat over each other and even going down, and so they're still really malleable. But one thing you can check is when you're standing, feel where those side seams are sitting, and you'll notice, like if you do have the bottom button buttoned, it'll be a little bit rotated, and you'll feel like the edges of your hips and then those side seams, and they'll be in like different locations. So you want just them to naturally sit to where those seams are just directly even at your sides. Otherwise, everything you do is just going to be twisting your whole spine if those don't sit evenly. So that's the biggest thing with those, removing those two buttons. That's what that will allow that to do. Because also just this sitting on you, this band of material in the center and the buttons, if it's, you know, if anything's twisted, not only what it's doing to the sides and like that's pulling your shoulders, but it's also sitting on your like pectoral muscles in an imbalance in that way, and even across like your abdominal muscles. And so the activation, because the body will sense something against it, and ideally it stays right in the center. So yeah, there we go. This video turned out differently than I would have expected it to. This seems quite different to me than most any other video that I've made up until this point for In The Image Clothing Company, as far as like the main side of things like this, but it's great. So yeah, I love button-ups. We'll definitely, I mean, there's no doubt, we will definitely sell button-ups, and they're gonna be great, as far as that's the whole reason. They're gonna be amazing. So yeah, we are in the Image Clothing Company. We are a clothing company. We will sell 100% natural material clothing, staying centered like this, right? Allowing the body to work, fitting correct. If you ever purchase in the Image Clothing Company clothing, please only do so if you have the intent to get it in your size. Do not ever purchase our clothing with the intent to have it fit oversized. Do not. Don't. I mean, do not. Because that's the whole thing. That's the whole reason we have it, is to allow the body to work. That's only going to be able to happen if we do all that we can to have our clothing fit us correct. So yeah, that's actually all I need to say on button-ups, which is great. That's awesome. I will mention this though, about not something else to do with them, but when I always say that shoulder seams need to sit behind that little bone, right? And I do, and they do. With button-up shirts, it's different because it's actually in front, but the like quote-unquote shoulder seams of button-ups are actually one piece. So you've got this from here all the way to here is one piece of material, and it's all sitting behind your shoulder. And so this isn't actually like the top shoulder seam, this piece here, but it's a piece of material that goes all the way to here. So it all is kind of like behind your upper shoulder area. It's like sitting on the back of you. So button-ups are different in that sense, where don't like try to modify your button-ups to get this seam to sit behind your shoulder, because that would place the whole shirt like clear up on your neck, and that we don't need to do that. But that does need a little bit of context to be able to understand, because yeah, it's not the same as with a t-shirt, how the shoulder seam is actually a seam. In a button-up, what we would call the shoulder seams is actually the shoulder band of material that's across, like I just showed. So it is different. But I'm gonna keep saying it the way that I do. Like within the intros of videos, I always say, sit behind that little bone. Even though button-ups are different, I'm not gonna specify each time I say it, you know, except for button-ups, they're different because they have a whole piece of material. So anyway, but there's some context, because yes, that is like an exception, if you will, but it's the same idea. So anyway, yeah, we are in the Image Clothing Company. We have 3 sides to us. We have this side of things, the main clothing / body mechanics, anatomy of the human body side of things. And then we have In the Image Clothing Company podcast, and I feel like I've been neglecting it. Within the podcast, we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and that is what we are, who we are, as in who we are as human beings. We are designed in the image of our living God. We can't do anything without our God. We are nothing without Him. We wouldn't exist without Him. And I am kind of getting a little bit convicted because I feel like I've been neglecting the podcast. So that's 1/3 of our company, is the podcast. And it's beautiful because it's a place for this to happen. For me to get a little bit convicted and realize, shoot, I haven't been giving that the attention that I need to. Because that's like, wow, one of the main reasons that we have it is to keep us very centered and to keep us realizing how we're allowed to do this and what we're really doing here. And I need to discuss the gospel more within what I'm doing than I have been. And that's okay, but I do need to. So yeah, and then we also have another 1/3 of our company, which is In the Image Clothing Company music. So I'm a fingerstyle guitarist, as well as every other way that I do and will be approaching music through that. So yeah, you can check those things out if you'd like. And yeah, the podcast has hit me really big. One big thing is, well, just in general it is, but one thing I'm realizing is it's cold. Like I'm saying, this is the state of Utah in the United States of America. We get cold winters, we get snow. Our license plates say the greatest snow on earth, right? So it gets to the point where you're not really going to be at least I am not gonna really be out here standing in like a foot deep snow or even a few inches and slush and making these videos. And so right now, for at least like the winter season, I think a lot of it's going to be podcast episodes, and that's really convicting. I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot to repent for, a lot to really kind of get rooted and then stay rooted within the gospel. And especially being the founder and the leader of this company, I've got to do all that I can without putting too much like pressure on myself to keep us centered on the gospel, and to always remember within everything we do why we're doing it. And that, you know, each third of our company really is as much our company as any other part of it. So the music side of things is just as much in the Image Clothing Company as the clothing side of things, but so is the podcast. And so within each of those things, we've got to really stay centered within the gospel. And the podcast being just like, that's the thing we do there, is have discussions on the gospel. It hits me. So we got to do that more, and yeah, we got to do that more. So I see the podcast being something really big, not for the sake of like recognition big, but for the sake of, like I'm saying, transition into it. I mean, even if I don't know, and not that it would need to be, but even if we had a podcast episode every single day, like that kind of really big, as far as really big with the amount of focus that goes into the podcast. So I feel like it hasn't quite looked up until this point how it's going to. And I've mentioned that since the start of it. I could tell it was going to be a big thing. So I just kind of am saying this for context of where I'm at with this. So that anyone who gets to see this can know. And also, I feel like this is a very transitional time for us as a company. As I was saying, a lot of it's probably the weather, but a lot of it's going to be the approaches as well, because once I've made videos, pretty much now is what I mean. I've pretty much to the point where I've made videos covering just about everything, at least foundational wise, within clothing, to the point that, you know, I mean, now we're kind of ready to just do this thing. I mean that, you know, because we've got all these foundational videos that we can always reference, stuff that will apply to human beings forever. And then now, just wherever the company goes, it can just take off, and we've got this stuff to always be able to be rooted in and come back to, as far as the discussions on the clothing, the discussions on the anatomy. And from there, yeah, a lot of podcast. I wasn't planning on talking about this at all within this at all. Even like quite a few minutes ago, I said something about this feels different to me, but good, different, transitional. I think the podcast is going to kind of change my life, is what I'm going to say. So it's going to be really sweet. All right, the music side of things is going to be great too. It already is. So, darn, man, yeah, I'm getting convicted with that podcast. And it's weird because I haven't been neglecting it, but I just feel like it's going to just like blossom. So, I don't know. That's just what I'm saying right now. I didn't plan on saying any of this, so we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, thank you. Button-up shirts, like I said, something we will definitely sell. Definitely sell. And but you know, this is stuff you can do within your own shirts, because every one of these 4 here is something I've just bought from somebody else. So we never want it to be like, if you want your body to work, you have to purchase our clothing. But we can say, if you do purchase our clothing, it is guaranteed that we have every intent to just allow your body to work. So, right, we don't want anybody to have to spend more money to just let their body they've been given do the thing that it was designed to do. But we will provide the means for that to happen. If you would like to purchase in the Image Clothing Company clothing, that will always be the only reason we have it, is for the body's function, for the sake of the human body's natural workings. So thank you. I'm shivering. It's pretty cold out here. Yeah, I kind of feel like we're almost gonna say like see you later to this field for the season, because I just feel like it's time to kind of transition into some things that are a little bit different. Not that we're changing, but just yeah, that podcast. I was not planning on talking about it this way within this video, but alright, so anyway, like I said, today is the 28th of December 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, and this is not me saying something, but I feel like I need to say this: to expect big things from In The Image Clothing Company. That's kind of me saying that to myself and anybody listening to this, because I'm not in charge of this thing, as far as I didn't plan it to even be this way when I started making some videos 4 or 5 months ago right here. And I didn't know we were going to have 3 sides of things. I didn't know that we were going to intertwine music with this. I didn't know we'd have a podcast and have it be what it is. So expect big things, because big things are happening, and I'm not the one like deciding them. I'm just really trying to do all that I can to like be useful here, to make use of my time and my life that I've been given. And I've been given this company that's allowing that to be done in a way that can affect every single human, because there's nobody that doesn't wear clothing in some form, at least at some point. And it's something that will change every life. It's something that we try our best to keep every opinion out of. That's what I've been saying since the start. You know, we discuss undisputed universal truths. We're imperfect, sinful by nature human beings, and we mess up on what we say, but to the best of what we can, we're not gonna ever try to push any kind of opinion, but we're also discussing things that apply to everybody. So it's gonna be something, man. And I can't tell you exactly what to expect, but like I said, expect big things, because that's like what I'm being told. So I'm excited. I'm willing to do, all that I need to allow this to be what it is, and to really expand this. I'm somebody who's not really done much like big within my life, but I feel that this is going to be really big. So cool. I'm not somebody who likes attention. I don't like the spotlight. I don't like that. But I just want to be willing and open to doing all that I need to do, however that looks. And so far, this has been more than I could have ever thought it could be, and I didn't plan any of this. So I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to, like I said, just stay rooted within the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I'm getting convicted of that podcast, so we'll see what that means as time goes on. So yeah, okay. A lot of gratitude. I want to just very clearly express. I think it's obvious just with my countenance within this, and the way you can tell that how I'm discussing the things that I'm talking about. But just immense gratitude for this, because this life's pointless. I'm saying that out of my own doing, not out of like trying to tell that to somebody else. But there's no point in this life about us trying to get recognition for ourselves or trying to like better ourselves. The point of this life is to glorify our God and to get back to Him. And yeah, I mean, no matter what I could have chosen to do in this life, I couldn't have chosen this. I couldn't have made this happen. This isn't me doing this, and I think it's pretty apparent, because I'm just some kid standing in a field talking about clothing, and I think we're gonna be able to look back and be like, what the heck? Like, how did we get to wherever we are at that time from just me standing in this field talking about clothing? Almost everything I've shown here I've bought just used at a thrift store. I've used nothing but a pair of scissors to get to the point that I've gotten with what I've done to the clothing. I've learned all this anatomy of the human body and its natural function, and I've allowed my own body to get back to its natural function without sitting in any kind of school class or doing any kind of, you know, deep research like that. It's strange how this has all worked. And so just staying convicted of, you know, obviously this is happening for a reason, and it doesn't need to be anything for me. I don't need any kind of recognition or any kind of, I don't need anything out of this. I just want to be used as a vessel, and I want to be open as best as I can to just be doing everything that I can to listen to promptings and just to just stay centered, man. And that's something that's so cool. Like I said, the podcast is huge to help us do that, being 1/3 of our company, but also the fact that we have to physically stay centered to allow the body to work. And our whole company is allowing the body to work. We have to stay centered in all aspects for that to even happen. So it's like, I've been given something that we can't even leave. Like, unless we stopped it entirely, there's no way we can really get off course without doing something different than what this company actually is. And so it's just crazy really what we've landed in and on with In The Image Clothing Company. So thank you so much. I'm 25 years old. I feel like this is like a really kind of like one of the main documentation videos as of late of just like the time and what's happening and where the company's at. So yeah, it's gonna be really cool. I'm really excited. I'm really grateful. So button-up shirts are something I love. They really help your body in a lot of ways. I think that shoulder like piece is something that's big, because that really, even more than just the regular shoulder seams on shirts, that really reinforces a natural position of the shoulders. And so I love button-up shirts. They're gonna be so big. We're gonna, like I said, I know I've said that multiple times. I'm gonna say it one more time because that's something I'm looking forward to. We are gonna no doubt sell button-up shirts. Short sleeve, long sleeve, 100% cotton. They're gonna just be awesome. So thank you.